welcome back again to another edition of the 5-Star Podcast of Wrestling. I'm your host, Sean Meyers, back for the 22nd week of this podcast, and joining me once again, my co-host, Justin Lowery. Justin, nice to join you. I had an opportunity to see you a couple days ago under some unfortunate circumstances, but glad that we're able to talk about professional wrestling again. I know not always something that necessarily makes you happy, but at least having that mindset of talking about some wrestling maybe will be a good remedy for you.
Let's get it going.
All right, so what we're going to start on is SummerSlam, second biggest pay-per-view of the year in WWE. And I think you and I were both on the same page that there was a lot of anticipation maybe over the final week or so in which they did a nice job building to SummerSlam. We mentioned all the rematches on the Raw side, but overall I thought it was a pretty decent card. They had a lot of top names and a lot of marquee matches that people have wanted to see for quite some time. That being said, before we get into our predictions, which we will discuss and have some bragging rights in that regard, your initial reaction overall to the show?
I thought it was good. I would probably give it like a B, on a scale. There were some things I liked. Not much I would say I hated. There's maybe one or two things I hated. A couple of things that didn't totally make sense to me or I didn't understand. But all in all, I thought it was a good, solid show.
My opinion while watching it live, and a lot of times when you're watching something live, you might not necessarily have the same view as if you were watching it a few days later recorded, but I thought it was a great start. I thought about an hour and a half in, it was on pace to be an incredible show. I thought things sort of went in the wrong direction later, and you and I talked about this previously. For the fans in attendance in particular, you kind of see the life drain out of them as this show goes along, because in addition to the 4 hours of the main card, there was also 3 matches and about 2 hours of a pre-show. So did you have that feel watching it live as well, that by the time 10 o'clock hit, the last 2 or 3 matches, which by the way, none of them really were, I would say, 5-star classics by any means, did you start to feel that maybe the show had sort of lost a little bit of steam?
Well, I think most of the major pay-per-views do that, even WrestleMania. When your show's that long, your audience is going to get, tired. I get tired watching it at home. You can only keep the energy up for so long before you just kind of plateau a little bit, and that happens. With that said, I thought they tried to do some things to spark the crowd. Like, no one expected Finn to come out as the Demon.
Right.
And putting that match on so late, that's a blah match. If he doesn't come out as the Demon, people are just going to be quiet as all can be just because they're tired. That at least got them the pop at the beginning of the match. They kept the match short, which I thought was actually, smart. So in that regard, I thought they played it smart, but the shows are way too long. Just way too long.
What would you do time-wise if you were in control?
I would keep it at 3.5 hours. I mean, just because it's WrestleMania or SummerSlam, you don't have to get everybody on the card. Look, there was tons of people still left off SummerSlam card as it is that you would think would be on, and the show was that long. Like, Corbin, Finn doesn't scream SummerSlam match. It just doesn't.
Right.
And with all these rematches that they're doing, quit those out, do something else. There's different things they can do.
Nakamura and Jeff Hardy felt like it could have been a TV match as well.
Right. Yeah, there was a lot of matches I felt like they could just be TV matches, and you don't need that.
I'm okay personally with 4 hours for the big shows. I think WrestleMania should be 4. It shouldn't be beyond that. SummerSlam, I'm okay with. Survivor Series, Rumble. To me, those are still the big 4. But I do think you cut back the pre-show by an hour and maybe only have 1 or 2 matches. When you make that 2 hours, some fans, like myself, would feel obligated to watch it or be in attendance. So it really adds a lot more. And to your point, maybe cut out a match or 2. You could still have it 4 hours, but maybe do a little bit more, have a backstage interview or a brief comedy skit. I remember back in the day, some of the best things about The Rock were the promos he would cut before a pay-per-view match. I think you can mix in a little bit of that so that people that aren't interested in seeing 5 consecutive hours of just wrestling would get a nice little break as well. So that's one way I would switch it up. But overall, I thought it was a pretty good show. That being said, we have to talk first about the most significant turn of events, at least in my estimation, the main event, Brock Lesnar, Roman Reigns. Right off the bat, Justin, WWE did something that they thought was necessary to keep the crowd engaged with teasing Braun Strowman. Did you like or dislike that, how it ultimately unfolded?
I'm going to say that was actually very smart. Whoever came up with that idea was smart, because as soon as he came out, I went, oh, okay, here we go, triple threat match. Like, okay, this is going to be cool. And then, he came out, which this didn't make sense to me. He cut the promo, I'm a face, so he has to, I'm going to tell him this to your face. As soon as you guys, this match is over, I'm challenging. Well, really, if you were like truly a face, wouldn't you just jump into a triple threat match? You're still waiting for your opponent to be beaten down, which is smart on his part, but totally doesn't make sense from where that promo is coming from. But it did keep the crowd into it, because it didn't let them crap on the match, because I think the crowd was going to crap on the match. So you bring Braun out right away, distract from that. So now, and then you're not going to have people leave or walk out like they did the last time.
Right.
So you have people sitting there thinking, okay, he's going to cash in. Now we can't leave. We're excited. We're interested. And, it worked. It's smart. Brock, kind of took him out. And, as soon as he took him out, I'm like, okay, he's not going to cash it in. Roman gets the win, and, they get what they want without crap hitting the fan.
There's a few things that I thought maybe could have been done differently. But overall, your point is well taken. This was what they needed to do to make sure the fans stayed engaged. Roman got an okay response. It wasn't terrible like we've heard from him in the past. I think people were happy that Brock Lesnar lost the title, more so than Roman won the title. And
exactly. Yes.
To me, that was the biggest thing. When Roman pinned Lesnar, I still wasn't sure if Braun Strowman was going to cash in then or not, but I knew that Lesnar was no longer champion. So I was happy for that. And I had the opinion that no matter who left as champion, as long as it wasn't Brock Lesnar, I was going to be happy. That being said, I didn't like that they didn't very clearly explain and show that Strowman was not going to be a factor. Yeah, we saw Lesnar throw the briefcase. I thought that was a smart idea, but it just landed at the top of the ramp. He should have thrown it out of sight and then really done a lot more damage, and they had to take Strowman to the back or something instead of him laying 5 feet from the ring, his briefcase, 50 feet from the ring. He's already survived being, thrown hundreds of chairs on top of him and so many other things. Why couldn't he recover from that in time to challenge? But that being said, they got Roman to win the title and the fans to, for the most part, support it. Match wasn't really anything special. I really thought that the spear ending was sort of weak, and Lesnar actually messed up because the chair ricocheted off of the ropes back on his face. He had to clear it off his face and then actually lifted his shoulder up. I don't know if you saw the footage or the image of that, but is that really pretty much the best we could have expected in this scenario?
Yeah, they had to keep it short. Lesnar hasn't had a long match in quite some time anyway. It is what it was. I'll be honest with you. The whole title picture, the Universal title picture, I don't care. Like, I'm not angry. I'm not into it. Like, I'm not a Roman hater. I'm not like, oh, Roman's a chimp, so I just don't care. Brock Lesnar being champion for so long has made me not care. I think the belt's a joke, not being defended. The whole Roman push, D-push, push, D-push, it's made me not care. Even Braun, they're making me not care about him because they haven't pulled the trigger, and the comedy, I just don't care. I really just don't care. If I'm going to turn off Raw to watch Monday Night Football in a couple weeks, it's probably going to be during a Universal title segment, to be honest with you.
That being said, do you have a problem with it being the final match of the night? It's what I expected all along.
It's what I expected all along. I guess those are your bigger names. I do find it funny, though, that the WWE title is their title. That is the title with the history to it. And they do treat that as an afterthought. I do find that interesting because that should be Vince's baby. That's his creation. And this Universal title, since it's been created, honestly, it's been kind of a joke.
Well, Justin, you gave me another good transition. Let's talk about the WWE title and the match between defending AJ Styles and the challenging Samoa Joe. I thought this was going to be good going in. I thought it had a chance to be great, and I thought that the emotion and the storyline, which admittedly you and I thought wasn't necessarily needed at this point to involve AJ's family. They decided to go that route. And while I still think they could have held off a little bit later, they worked it in beautifully in this match. It turned out to not only be a great match, but to be a great story as well. And that's really what WWE strives for, more than just in-ring competition, but to bring emotions into it. When they had AJ's wife and I believe one of his daughters there in attendance ringside, Samoa Joe at one point calling them out, and then AJ just going nuts, snapping on Samoa Joe, ultimately costing himself the match but not the title for Styles, and then him going over to his family with blood pouring down his face and his, maybe 3 or 4-year-old daughter saying, "Daddy, you're bleeding." Intentional or not, it just was a moment that I think anyone that's a fan of wrestling would have had feelings, one way or the other. That's something that they're going to be able to relate to, and I think the match certainly is going to stand out for quite some time for that reason.
Oh yeah, that was my favorite match of the night. Like you said, we both agreed that we didn't think they needed to get personal, but you know what? I thought it worked really well. Every time Samoa got on the mic, I thought it was awesome, the stuff he said. I actually saw people on Twitter complain a little bit, like it was in poor taste, blah, 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 because today everyone has to complain, about something. But, I thought it was awesome. Clearly, AJ was okay with it. His wife was okay with it. If they don't have a problem, no one should have a problem.
I don't think that's wrestling to me. That's fine. Now, when you're bringing in real-life tragedies and stuff, I think that's a little bit more sensitive.
I think if the performers are okay with it, like when, who brought up Reed, with Charlotte? So I forget. Didn't they bring up
Was it Sasha?
Was it her? I can't remember. But if they're okay with it, then we should be okay with it, because ultimately it's their decision. But I thought the match was good. It was solid. But the storyline I thought made it great. And I'm okay with this, I guess, being the first match. Maybe the ring work wasn't where I wanted it to be. Not that it was bad.
It was hard hitting, for sure. I mean, AJ was legitimately, he was about one of 4 or 5 guys that legitimately ended up bleeding during SummerSlam.
But it made sense. With the dynamic of the match, everything they did made perfect sense. And I do hate, DQ finishes on major pay-per-views, especially when you already had one earlier in the night. It's repeating itself. But, of course, this is the first of probably 3 matches. And, next one being at the Hell in a Cell. So I guess it makes sense. I liked it. The crowd really seemed to like it. It pretty much got positive reviews from everybody. And, I can't wait to, see where it goes.
Already way better than I think the feud that AJ Nakamura had. Again, the last man standing match between those two was good, but the 2 to 3 months preceding it wasn't. This is already off to a hot start with this feud, and we'll get to what happened on SmackDown. I think it only added to it. One feud that's probably over, and I don't think that anyone's going to complain about it, is the fact that Ronda Rousey is now your women's champion on Raw. She dismantled Alexa Bliss. Really no chance, I think, for Bliss to rebound in terms of challenging Ronda Rousey. I guess she does have the rematch clause, but I don't see really much changing as far as Ronda's dominance. It shocked me that Alexa literally, I don't think, got a single offensive move in other than the sleeper or whatever that had no effect. Man, for as great of a champion as Alexa has been, and maybe great is a bit much, but she's been a 5-time champion. For her to look so ridiculous in that match, I don't get it. I understand you want Ronda looking dominant. I just thought it was a little over the top in my opinion.
Yeah, you could still make Ronda look dominant and still a little inexperienced, because she is new, and the commentators can convey that to the audience. There's a story you can tell. One of the things I actually hated from the pay-per-view came from this match. Actually, 2 things. I hated Ronda Rousey. Her talking distracted me during the match. Her screaming, "Are you ready? Are you it distracted me.
Yeah, I didn't like that at all.
I thought it was awkward. The first time I thought she was calling her spots out. Is she calling the spots out that loud? And and then
hey, Triple H used to during his matches.
Right. It was just awkward. And I also hated the fact that they also kind of made the Bellas, make you aware that the Bellas were out there for that match. Because, my God, I do not want more Bellas at all. Like, I can't stand them. And I have a big fear that, we're setting up for, Nikki and Ronda, down the line in Evolution. And they were kind of working that storyline, starting it into that match.
And Bree's already got a big storyline just 2 days after SummerSlam. So
right, like I just, the match itself, that's how they're going to treat Ronda. I mean, now who's ever going to beat her for the title?
Well, so you raise a good point. The standard is now set that really no other woman should be able to contend with her whatsoever. But you go back to about 2 weeks prior on Raw, Alicia Fox lost to Ronda Rousey, but she was at least somewhat competitive. She even left Ronda down in a heap a week prior to that on an exchange outside. And then go back to Ronda's first match. Stephanie McMahon was able to thwart the armbar like 3 times. Not that Stephanie really got a ton of offense, but she got enough to make it an interesting competitive match. So why do you make Alexa look so terrible? It just, to me, it really hurts Alexa way more than it helps Ronda.
Well, right. I mean, we know why Stephanie was able to do that because she's Stephanie. I mean, you can't make McMahon look totally weak. I don't think Ronda would have did the same thing to Charlotte. If the match was between them, I get it in one way, and another way I don't get it. I mean, I don't hate it. I don't love it. Whatever. It's kind of silly. But, I thought the whole match was a little silly, with the Bellas out there. And
Can Bliss rebound from this?
I don't think we're not going to remember, that. I don't think we're going to remember this match. Like, for her first title win, it wasn't epic. It's not something we're going to remember. Like, oh, man, when Shawn Michaels won a WrestleMania.
Well, yeah.
12, like, it's not something, and I think they wanted to be, you would think you would want her first title win to be special, and I don't think it came off as special.
Right. Agree with you on that. So that's one women's match that was not competitive, probably for most people disappointing. But the SmackDown women's title match I thought was pretty darn good. Match-wise, I would say it was a very good match. I wouldn't say great, but very good. And it was sort of the ending that I had predicted a week ago, Justin. Charlotte kind of sneaks in a victory from what looked to be in the hands of Becky Lynch. Charlotte becomes the champion. A lot of people aren't happy that she has the belt again. A lot of people weren't even happy that she was in the match. But it had a purpose. Now, you could argue WWE is sort of tone deaf in what they were going for here, but they did accomplish the fact that Charlotte winning elicited a pretty significant response in a lot of people in this match. It turns out that Becky Lynch, as a result of this, turns heel after the match. But I say turns heel loosely because about 95% of the fans were cheering for her, and they were booing Charlotte as she was sitting there crying. Kind of sucks for Carmella. She's really an afterthought in all of this. But her reign ends, Charlotte the new champion, and now Charlotte is being pursued by heel Becky Lynch. We'll see if they maybe have to shift roles, but the match itself was good, and the after-match, I guess, extracurriculars were very, very significant, and I think will be memorable.
Yeah, it was one of the better matches of the night, that's for sure. I even thought Carmella was good. I thought she played her part perfectly. I think you're right. Again, this is some of the WWE's problem. They missed the boat a lot. And if they actually thought people were going to be behind Charlotte and not Becky, and, they're sadly mistaken. Because a lot of people, I would say most people actually empathize with Becky. You can feel where Becky's coming from. That doesn't make her a heel. If I could sit back and go, man, I would feel the same way as Becky. That does not make you the heel. People would be frustrated too. Charlotte really had no business being in that match. She did nothing to warrant being in that match except coming back from, an injury. She had no reason to be in the match except that she's Charlotte Flair. Kind of like how Roman always gets into the picture because, me and you talked. I've compared her. She's the Roman Reigns of the female division. I'm rooting for Becky here. And it's nice to see when people get a little edge. And Becky, you just want to root for Becky. She just comes off that way. Charlotte kind of comes off, you want to boo Charlotte, where Becky's just a natural face, and it makes you want to cheer Becky. And even if she has an edge, that's okay. That's even better, because then you're going to get the older demographic, not the 8-year-olds, but the 15, 16, 17, the guys in their early 20s, really behind Becky.
Real quickly on this, do you think Charlotte is clearly the best woman in WWE all around?
She's up there. I
think it's very debatable. I really don't think she's great on the mic. I think she has some, at least for me, some annoying mannerisms and tendencies. In the ring, I think you could say she's probably the best or among the best, but overall, I'm not sure that she really is. So I don't get why she always has to be presented as being pretty much untouchable, at least on SmackDown.
She's Ric Flair's daughter. I mean, if she was if she was this Charlotte, not Ric Flair's daughter, I think she would still be positioned high in the division. But I think the extra boost comes from who her dad is, and they just play off that.
I always thought Sasha was better going back to their days in NXT. Now, Sasha, you could debate that, but
honestly, between those 4 horsewomen, Sasha, Bayley, Becky, at some point throughout the NXT and stuff, I thought one of them were the best one. And that's a good thing. And you have 4 girls right there that you could easily rotate in and out of a top spot that are all very good wrestlers. And that's fun. That's great to see in the women's division.
A match that I think set the tone on SummerSlam Eve was the Intercontinental title match. It was the first match of the main event of SummerSlam that kicked off at 7 o'clock. Dolph Ziggler defending his title against Seth Rollins. And, man, they had plenty of time, and did they ever deliver? I thought it was, a slower start because they knew how much time they were getting, but they built up to a dramatic finish, and Seth Rollins, who's been red hot for, about 6 months now, continued to perform at the highest level. He actually pulled out a new combination of moves that was just really breathtaking, first time I'd ever seen. It was sort of the reverse of the Falcon Arrow and whatever else, the superplex, so on and so forth. But these guys, I think, came a little short in Pittsburgh at Extreme Rules in the 30-minute Iron Man match for various reasons. They did not leave anything on the table here. Great match. Maybe a surprise outcome, at least from your perspective. But regardless of the outcome, I thought the match had a legitimate argument for match of the night and maybe even match of the year on the main roster.
Match of the year, I don't know if I can go that far. I would actually have to think about that because, we're already at the end of August, so there's been a lot of other matches, including, the WrestleMania Triple Threat IC title match that I really, really love. I'm not surprised by the outcome. I just thought that it would be better to go a different way, from a recap show. I don't know what you do with Dolph now. Where does Rollins... kind of go. We kind of got a little bit of an idea, from Raw, which we'll get into. But just keeping it in SummerSlam, a great match. Really enjoyed it. And sometimes, you want the opener to be hot to get the crowd going. But the WWE tends to run into these issues too in the pay-per-view. Here's the the opening match. It's usually involving Seth Rollins, whatever, the IC title, somewhere like that. Sets the tone for the night. But then other guys don't they don't surpass it. Like, man, that match was great. I can't wait to see what the rest of the show is going to be like. And then it's like, oh, well, man, that was 2 hours ago was the best match. And now it's just kind of like, And then that also helps you lose interest throughout the match. I know there's ebb and flows of a card, but, that might have been better be positioned later in the show. But then, maybe the crowd would have been dead and it wouldn't have came off as good.
Right, yeah, it's tough. I thought it made sense to have it as the opener, but it was so good that it was really, you got the feeling it was pretty much downhill from there. Although I will say the tag team match with the New Day and the Bludgeon Brothers that followed up was pretty good too. So if you can carry momentum in that second match and then keep it going from there, that's a good recipe. But I thought it was great, and it is interesting because now Ziggler and Drew McIntyre sort of have a new outlook, and maybe they become a tag team that challenges. I don't know if that's next for them, but Ziggler probably is going to drop down a little bit. That being said, he got a very special moment by having, maybe match of the night.
The only other thing you got to think about is there's still a question mark about his contract. no, people still don't know if, he's re-signed or not. Maybe that's a sign that he's not re-signing, and it's just a matter of time before we don't see Ziggler, period anymore.
That could. I think he did a comedy show like the day before SummerSlam. I know that he's got a lot going on outside of pro wrestling. A match that has been about pro wrestling for about 8 years finally came to fruition. Yes, they've wrestled before, but not on a stage like this. I'm talking about The Miz and Daniel Bryan. When Daniel Bryan was injured and seemingly never going to be able to wrestle again, people said if he could have one more match, it has to be against The Miz. This is the match that he needs to have. Didn't seem like it was going to happen. It finally did happen. He came back, of course, at WrestleMania. They built up to this. So finally, the feud culminates with a match at SummerSlam. For you, Justin, did it live up to the expectations?
Yes and no. I mean, that's not a bad thing. I think it was so long in the making that it was almost impossible to live up to it. In some people's mind, because you just get too hyped up in your own head. But that being said, I thought it was a good match, solid match. I see the ending with the brass knuckle. As soon as I saw Maurice at ringside, I knew the ending was going to involve her. Either way, and actually I thought there was going to be a fake baby incident again because, you saw the baby carriage out there.
I thought that was kind of weird too. That's exactly what I thought.
I doubt that they actually had their daughter out there. I doubt that, but maybe I'm wrong. But anyway, the brass knuckles thing, okay, the Miz wins. It basically helps carry on the feud. And I think it also shows that Daniel Bryan is or will be re-signing because clearly they're continuing the feud. And it's just making you wait a little bit longer and want Daniel Bryan to finally triumph. Playing
and the backstage segment that they had, I mentioned SummerSlam didn't have a lot of that. It was pretty much all video packages or in-ring stuff. But that backstage segment, I think, was important to show the frustration of Daniel Bryan, but the fact that he's going to keep plowing forward and finally, seemingly at some point, get his revenge on The Miz. My initial reaction was very, very good match. There was a lot of storytelling in it. They were doing the whole punching in the face. Miz was doing the Daniel Bryan's moves. It was more than just two guys going out there and wrestling. It was really a mini movie that they had. But it just disappointed me and made me think I wanted a little bit more, but I think I'm saying that because there's going to be more to it. So They did not want to pull out all the stops. And that's the same feeling I had with AJ Nakamura at WrestleMania, that there's got to be more to this. Well, they ended up having 4 more matches after it. I don't know if The Miz and Daniel Bryan are going to do that, but that they're going to have more going forward. We've already seen a match announced. So I think while you wanted it to be the end-all, be-all at SummerSlam, they had a longer-term plan in mind.
Right. And, we've kind of complained about how Rollins and Ziggler were kind of working backwards with the Iron Man match. And then clearly with Hell in a Cell coming up, they can make that match a Hell in a Cell match to keep, from what happened. They're clearly working in the right direction. The only thing you got to worry about is, do they want Bryan in a Hell in a Cell type of match? I mean, at one point in that match, he landed on his head kind of weirdly. I don't know if you remember that spot. And I saw on Twitter a lot of people were like, commented like, with Bryan's concussion issues, like that made a lot of people like cringe a little bit just because they know his past history and because even me, I went, ooh, man, that looked a little dangerous, and you got to double check to make sure he gets up from something like that.
Yeah, I always sort of have that feeling when he wrestles. I know he doesn't do the top rope headbutts and stuff like that, doesn't dive to the outside as much, but yeah, you always kind of hold your breath. Nonetheless, it was, I thought, very, very good. It's just probably couldn't put it as great. I thought there was 2 greats at SummerSlam with Seth and Dolph, and then with AJ and Joe. I thought this one was just very good, as was the SmackDown Women's title match as well. One match that I don't think you'd say was very, very good. It wasn't very long. It wasn't very competitive, but it had that wow factor to it. You alluded to at the onset, Justin. It was a complete shock to me and to pretty much everyone. Finn Balor coming out as the Demon. He made short work of Baron Corbin. No one really saw this coming. It really was not hinted at like it had been in the past, and we haven't seen the Demon in I don't even know how long. I think it's got to be probably close to a year at this point. He didn't do it at WrestleMania for sure. So a nice little treat for the fans there, and it made sense because Corbin and Finn had already wrestled. Finn got a hard-fought victory last month, and then on TV, Corbin sort of got redemption. So they were about even in terms of going back and forth. So it's not like a loss here completely buries Corbin. He'd already gotten the better of Finn at some points, unlike the Kevin Owens-Braun Strowman, which was Braun Strowman each and every time, in which a squash, I think, really does a disservice to KO. I think Corbin can survive this, but it really puts Finn Balor over the top now with, hey, when he becomes the Demon, he's going to be a completely different guy. That's always been the story, but you saw it firsthand here at SummerSlam. And again, your point, it kept the crowd certainly into it throughout the night as this one came later on.
Yeah, I mean, I like the Demon. I mean, I love Finn, period. But Finn just has Finn has a generic look about him. You know, you put the paint on him, and then wow, there's a marketer's dream right there. You know, that's what's going to sell the shirts and the masks and stuff to the kids. You know, that's what's going to sell the merch. I mean, I like it. The other thing I found it odd, and do you really need a Demon to beat, you know, Corbin? You know, haven't we been told like the Demon's supposed to be for the big time matches, to, you know, things that he really needs to get up for? You know, do you really need it to beat Corbin? If you do, what does that say about, you know, you? But, I mean, I guess that's a small complaint. That's just something that I thought of when he came out.
Well, I think it became more apparent and more noticeable the next night when he didn't use it in a Universal title match.
Right, like, it doesn't make logical sense to me, but except that I think they just put on the makeup because they just wanted to get that, you know, rise out of the crowd, which is smart.
It worked. It worked.
And who knows? Maybe they made that decision 2 hours before the match. You know, maybe it could have been a last-minute decision because we haven't seen that, like you said, in quite some time.
That's all I had for the matches to really focus on. Anything else stand out to you? Of course, there was the U.S. title match, Shinsuke defeating Jeff Hardy. As we mentioned, Strowman really knocking out Kevin Owens in, I think it was probably 2 minutes or less. SmackDown Tag Team titles, Bludgeon Brothers, New Days was a good one, but it kind of ended dubiously with the DQ finish. And then the pre-show matches, B-Team Revival, B-Team getting another fluky victory. Andrade Cien Almas and Zelina Vega defeating Rusev and Lana. No surprise, although it actually came with a relatively clean ending, with Aiden English not being involved, and then Cedric Alexander retaining in a pretty good match against Drew Gulak. Ironically, the 3 pre-show matches all ended in roll-ups. I don't know if you noticed that or not, but overall, you know, I think the things that we touched on were the bigger takeaways, but the other things that I just highlighted, there was some pretty good stuff mixed in as well, I thought.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not really going to comment on the pre-show matches because WWE, that tells you that they don't care about them. I mean, if you're putting on a match at 5:30 where not even a third of the crowd is, you know, in the arena, you know, I what's there to really say? The Strowman, Kevin Owens things, I saw that Stone Cold commented on the match, and absolutely, he doesn't mind that Strowman, you know, of course, won, but he does not understand whatsoever making Kevin Owens look like a complete idiot.
It's bad, man. That one more than anything else, even more than Bliss, making Kevin Owens look that awful after some of the legitimate life, I guess, death-defying risks that he's taken for this company, he deserves better than that.
Yeah, the fact that, and you don't have to, like, you know, he should have went in there with a strategy because he had all this time to think. At least make him look like he had a game plan. And even if Strowman overcomes everything he throws at him, at least, you know, make it a little bit of a challenge.
How can anyone take him as a serious contender? Let's say Strowman wins the title in, I don't know, 3 months. Owens can never realistically be a challenger now, right? If you use logic, at least.
So if you use logic, but WWE doesn't use logic. They'll just be like, oh yeah, here, Kevin Owens. You know, they made Jinder the champion out of nowhere after years of always losing. It just, you know, but it's not going to make the reign credible. You know, maybe, you know, Vince has never been a huge fan of him, supposedly. Because
right, and it looks like that's the case.
Right, and that's probably the case, you know, and I think, you know, you saw it there. Other than that, with the show, the U.S. title match, the only thing I'm going to remember from that is I'll give Jeff Hardy props for being a crazy man, because that spot with the Swanton, on the edge of the ring there on the apron. That's hard. I mean, people don't like taking spots on that. People have been severely injured doing stuff.
I don't like that he feels the need to do that. That being said, it's going to be the only reason anyone remembers that match.
Right. And the fact that he doesn't do that move on house shows because he's older, it hurts. It's tough. And then he pulls that out in a match that you're never, like you said, you're never going to remember, but you are now going to remember that spot. Just props to him from, being 40 and still doing insane things like that.
Want to get to the prediction graphic. Now, Justin, this one might hit a little close to home. I will say, I picked a couple matches where I kind of went against what logic said with my predictions. And the one that really stood out was picking Seth Rollins because it didn't make a lot of sense. That being said, sometimes this company just does sort of unpredictable or, makes decisions that don't seem to really have a long-term logical explanation, but whatever. So here's our picks going into SummerSlam. You could see Justin and I, for the main ones, were on the same page. We both thought Roman and Joe would win. We both agreed with Nakamura, Bryan, Strowman, Finn Balor, the Bludgeon Brothers B Team, and Andrade Cien Almas and Zelina Vega. And then we differed on the other ones, and let's see how it turns out. As you can see, I was correct in all but 2 of the matches, so 11-2. We both missed on the Daniel Bryan one. We both missed on the Bludgeon Brothers, although in our defense, the Bludgeon Brothers, while technically losing, did keep their tag team titles, at least for the time being. So you could understand that one not really being 100% incorrect. However, we both got the benefit of the doubt by picking Samoa Joe. He won by DQ but did not win the title, so it sort of canceled out. So really the differences were that you went with Carmella, I picked Charlotte, got that one right. I went with Seth Rollins, and again, that outcome doesn't make a lot of sense necessarily, but it was the correct one. And then the pre-show 205 Live match, Cedric Alexander, Drew Gulak, I don't think there was a lot of ramifications either way for that one. However, the one that I really have to take you to task here, Justin, is you picked Alexa Bliss, I picked Ronda Rousey. So if nothing else, I feel like I have bragging rights for that one because, every now and then you're going to get picks wrong, but man, you were way wrong on that one.
Well, I knew she was losing as soon as they announced her and Trish had ever lose. I'm like, they just gave away the ending to that match because there's no way that's going to be for the title.
When did they announce that?
I never ever. Was that Saturday?
Okay, yeah. So I didn't hear that, but I saw someone mention it while SummerSlam was going on, and that sort of confused me because I said, "When was this announced?"
Yeah.
Why not wait? Why not wait? I mean, what's the harm in waiting?
They totally 100% gave it away. And it's funny you said that one. Oh, well, I got that match wrong. But honestly, I saw how the match went down, and yeah, it went down probably the way most people thought it was. And I think I went with the pick because I think it should have went a different way. And the match did not make me feel any different. The whole jobbing out with the Bella Twins there and this and that, and honestly, I saw that, Yahoo was on their homepage and ESPN ran the story. I'm still going to stick to my guns and say it would have been better if they would have held off until October at the women's pay-per-view.
I'm not arguing that at all.
They did it, and honestly, I wasn't surprised. I kind of figured they were going to do it. I picked Bliss because I was hoping there would be some type of swerve involved. There wasn't, especially when Natalya came out and this and
good to see her, by the way, but she really didn't factor in. Yeah, that was.
But another thing that confused me is Bliss always had like somebody, a sidekick,
Mickey or Fox.
She comes out with the match and she's by herself, which that didn't make sense to me because all storyline long she always had somebody, and then I'm thinking, oh, okay, someone's gonna run out of the crowd or under the ring, and there's gonna be something. And you got nothing. So the whole thing was just a little confusing. But that's my reasoning for my pick.
Fair enough. So that covers SummerSlam. Now, I know we kind of talked about it. We were going to mention before NXT TakeOver. Didn't get a chance for the preview. But you did watch the duration of the TakeOver. Is that correct?
Oh, yeah. I watched it live.
I'll give the floor to you now. Just talk. You don't have to go into significant detail, but just your takeaways, what you thought was good, and why you like NXT takeovers a lot of times better than even the main show.
The whole card from top to bottom was excellent. A lot of people, I mean, you would have to go back and really examine. A lot of people are calling this the best takeover from top to bottom with the card. Every match delivers, and they have better characters in NXT than they do on the main roster. The storytelling, everything was just awesome. Have you watched the takeover yet, Sean?
Well, ironically, Justin, I was going to give, I don't know if this would be of interest to people or they would just think I'm a weirdo, but I am now just starting 2018 for NXT. I had stopped right at the turn of the year, had to get caught up on some other things. So 205 Live, I pressed the pause button around February. With NXT, I stopped right at the beginning of the year. They did like a 2-hour best of 2017. That was the last show I'd seen for months and months. Just a couple days ago, I watched the TakeOver Philadelphia in January with the Dave Meltzer 5-star match between Andrade Cien Almas and Johnny Gargano. And then
that was a 5-star match.
It was great. The only thing is I knew who was going to win. I also knew that Ciampa was going to get involved. I thought mistakenly Ciampa would cost Gargano the match. He did not. So I was a little surprised that actually Andrade won it with the move that he did. But that show I thought was really, really good. Cole and Black had a great match as well. I'm not a Shayna Baszler fan, but she can work a pretty good match and has a nice role there. So going back to January, I thought that show was great. And yeah, the main event was special. Now, was it better than anything the main roster has done in 5 years or whatever, as the rating would indicate by Meltzer? No, probably not. But it was a heck of a match for sure.
I disagree with you. I think that match right now is the match of the year in that company, NXT or main roster. For me, that.
Well, I can say for the year. I'm saying the whole thing about the Meltzer rating is in the history of him doing it, dating back to the 80s, he's given WWE's main roster 5 ever matches that are 5 stars.
But that's, going back, it could be kind of deserving. I know you're very biased towards WWE. You know, me and you have talked about that.
I don't think Kurt Angle ever had one on his scale. Now come on now.
I would have to, honestly, it's hard for me to remember every detail. I would have to go back to, like, him and Michaels.
That's a no-brainer for me.
Right.
Probably him and Benoit. That's the thing is he now gives them out much more frequently, or 6 or 7 stars.
Well, that's the truth. But I think there's also a lot of great wrestling happening in the wrestling community today, just outside. I mean, there's a lot of good stuff. And that match was definitely a 5-star match. That match was friggin' awesome. And
did anything this past Saturday come close to that in your estimation?
No. There's nothing that I would say was 5-star, but from top to bottom, like the beginning of the card to the end of the card, there was probably a bunch of 4.5-star matches. Dream, him and EC3 was, really good. And Dream, I don't know if you heard about his tights.
Yeah, Vince apparently didn't like it, but
yeah, call me up, Vince. Which, real quick, he didn't like it. You always hear, Vince say that he wants guys to go out there and grab the brass ring and do this and do that and get noticed. Well, here's a guy doing a little something to get noticed and grab that ring, and it's like, ho. You don't get yourself noticed. I hate that hypocrisy from that guy. But Baszler and Kairi Sane, I'm not a big Kairi Sane. I hate the pirate gimmick. So for me, that's why I don't like her. Even though she's a good worker, I just hate the gimmick. That match was surprisingly pretty good. Do you know the results of the show?
I tried not to look too much. I know that she won the women's title.
Right,
which, by the way, I thought they had a good match to conclude the first Mae Young Classic. I thought it was. Yes. So they have some chemistry. Probably
better. And then the main event, Gargano and Ciampa. I really thought Johnny Wrestling would win the title. He didn't. But then I did read that it sounded like he legitimately got hurt, and Triple H even came out and said the ending of the match was changed on the fly. But he did say that the outcome was not changed, whether he's telling the truth or not, because it looked like he actually did dislocate his knee on a pretty insane spot. Which
see now, I haven't seen their exchanges in 2018. I always go back to the Cruiserweight Classic and the match they had there, and you and I talked about it. Gargano got absolutely not like in wrestling, but in real life, got basically just the crap beat out of him by Ciampa. Those guys, it seemed like they're willing to pretty much do anything that their bodies can absorb, and they just gladly take it. They're nuts. And I don't think that works long-term on the main roster, but on special occasions, I think you could do stuff like that, as long as you don't suffer these debilitating injuries. And both those guys have had some injuries recently now with Gargano's, it seems like.
It was, and the title, it's personal, but the title is also meaningful too. It's personal because he's the champion. Like, they work it in where, like I've talked about the Universal title scene, I could care less. And the Adam Cole Ricochet match, I love Ricochet. I don't think that guy could ever have a bad match. It's amazing. I mean, I love Adam Cole. That match, I was geeked up. I'm not going to lie. I was like a little schoolboy.
What's the one thing that you would change to make WWE pay-per-views more like NXT takeovers?
Let everybody go out and give their best performance. Don't give it. Let them go out and be them. Like, I think wrestlers sometimes have to hold stuff back. I think Kofi Kingston can do a lot of great stuff, but he's not allowed. I think Big E, which we've seen Big E do some crazy stuff, those dives, which he needs to stop because he's not the best at them. Let the guys do what they do best. And I think NXT does that.
But so a Kevin Owens Braun Strowman match, there's a story being told that Owens has no chance against this dominant guy. If they were in NXT, they'd probably have a 12 to 15 minute match that they pulled out all the stops and both guys did their.
You could even make Braun destroy him, but maybe Kevin kicks out of 3 or 4 pins that you think he has no business kicking out of. At least show him he's not going out, like a chump. Like,
I just see a match like that, for instance, if it took place on a takeover, it'd be completely different than what we saw at SummerSlam.
Well, Kevin probably would have did a couple insane spots that got the crowd insane, kick out of it, and you're like, how is he going on? And he moves on. I got to bring back, which I think I texted you this. I probably saw the coolest super kick ever. Like,
right. I've intentionally avoided the video, but it was Ricochet doing like a backflip and Cole got him.
And Adam Cole, perfect. Like, it was.
He actually, on the one I did, he used a kendo stick shot to Aleister Black in the midst of a backflip midair, and the crowd went nuts for that too.
Honestly, it was perfect. It was right on. Like, for me, I always remember the Shelton Benjamin,
Shawn Michaels
coming off the top rope, or Orton's done a lot of crazy things out of the RKO.
Yeah, like the Evan Bourne shooting star press.
That stuff was this is up there. This was awesome. It was a hell of a spot. It was done perfectly by 2 guys that nailed it. And you can't always say that about what goes on in the main roster.
So SummerSlam's a B. What do you give in TakeOver?
An A.
Okay, fair enough. So NXT once again takes the weekend in your estimation.
Yes. It also helps that their shows are 2.5 hours.
Right.
I think NXT
with 5 matches typically.
Right, and they all get time, and
to me that's what I changed the most. You have 13 matches between the pre-show and I think 10 matches on the main show of SummerSlam. Scale that back to 7 or 8.
Right, you let these guys showcase themselves, and isn't that what these pay-per-views are supposed to be about? I mean, if you don't
typically takeovers also have cleaner finishes. Typically, not all the time, but they usually have cleaner finishes.
Yes.
Fair enough.
That's all I got to say about that. It was a great show. Watch it ASAP.
So we have covered SummerSlam. We've talked a little bit about TakeOver. We still got Raw and SmackDown to get to as well. We're going to do that momentarily on a couple more segments upcoming. But for now, for my co-host Justin Lowery, Sean Meyers signing off with our SummerSlam recap right here on the 5-Star Podcast of Wrestling. Stick around. We'll be back to talk Raw and SmackDown.